Hello and welcome to week 3 in Introduction to Online Writing Instruction. I wanted to do a quick video this week to walk you through the week 3 activities because we're going to start getting into technology and starting to think about connecting technology to the lesson plan that we've already created. First, I just want to say a few things about that lesson plan. Several of you expressed dismay. I fear that you'd never done this before or this seems overwhelming. We're going to do this piece by piece. So this first bit that we did in week 2 is just getting our feet wet as we move through each one of the activities through weeks 3 through 7. We're going to kind of go back to that plan and say, okay, do we need to revise this to account for this? Do we need to add on another piece somewhere to make this make sense? So I'm not expecting the first 3 weeks of this to be perfect right out of the gate. It's just a way to get to start talking about what you need to do in your class and to have something to connect the next few weeks to as we discuss what students need in your online classes. So with that in mind, week 3, we're going to be doing tech tips and tools. So the first thing that I would like you to do is to read these readings in the schedule. The first is actually a book we haven't started yet. It's the Pacansky-Brock book, Michelle Pacansky-Brock's Best Practices for Teaching with Emerging Technologies. And this book's a little different than the others. We're going to read the first few chapters to kind of get a grounding in technology, and then the rest of the book is kind of a resource that you can dip into to complete these assignments. So if you'll see chapter 5, tools for participatory learning, those are going to be tools that you might want to use as you're considering the student-to-student interaction or the instructor-to-student interaction piece in week 3. So this book is kind of a guidebook to a variety of different tools that you might use, less than just something that we're going to just read straight through. The next thing I'd like you to read is the Warnock text, just chapter 3, and that's going to give us an idea for the second assignment in week 3 of how to just start thinking about the tools you're going to use so that you have solid tools that are accessible, that aren't necessarily redundant, but students are able to access easily. So this is just a really good short chapter in this textbook to give you a starting ground to think about as you begin to start to map ideas of what you want to complete in your class to tools and technologies that are going to help you complete that. The third reading is actually chapter 3 of the Foundational Practices book, which is all online. I've linked in, if you click on that, PDFs of the particular chapters that we need to read. They're just going to download onto your computer. And this is going to cover the difference between asynchronous and synchronous modalities. Some writing programs are completely asynchronous. They require no synchronous meetings. So in other words, you can never require students to meet online all at the same time. Some programs are going to be a blend of synchronous and asynchronous. Generally, the classes that I teach are a blend. I offer synchronous meetings for students individually, and I also have some small group meetings in almost every online writing class that I have that are synchronous meetings. They take place at the same time. So this reading is going to give you kind of a primer in making those kinds of decisions. What activities need to be synchronous? Where do I need to embed asynchronous activities in my class? And then again, to think about the tools mentioned in Pacansky-Brock to match up to those kinds of purposes for what you want your students to learn. So one last thing I want to say about that before I talk about the assignments quickly is that all tools and technologies need to serve the purpose of the class. The principal statement number 2 talks about, or item number 2 talks about how you shouldn't necessarily spend a lot of time with your students on instruction in technology. So think about that as you review these tools. What kinds of tools can you use with your students that they will have already had access to, that the components of which are very simplistic, or that students can learn fairly quickly and easily on their own. And as you do reviews of these tools in the discussion this week, you can identify some of these. Even if you find a tool that looks great but is impossible to use, go ahead and do a review of that so we all kind of know that that isn't a tool to use in classes. So with that in mind, I just want to take us to the website for this week and talk about the two activities that we're going to do. The first one you'll want to get on fairly quickly, and it's the discussion board. Not necessarily that you have to have the reviews done right away, but that you need to claim the resources that you want to use fairly quickly. So you're going to be reviewing one tech tool that will facilitate faculty to student engagement, one that facilitates student to student engagement, and one that facilitates student to content engagement. You might find that there's a tool that meets two of those. You might find there's a tool that meets all three of these. That would be kind of interesting to see if you could find one tool that met all three. But the first thing you need to do is claim the tools you're going to be reviewing. So if you know there's a tool you want to review, get on the discussion board now. Just open up that discussion board and create a thread to claim those tools. So go into week 3, create a thread, and in the subject line, so people don't have to click on or scroll down to find your thing, say, I'm going to do Google Hangouts, I'm going to do Google Docs, and Weebly. So you don't have to put anything here. You can just like put a word in there if it's not going to let you post, but just post in that subject line the ones that you plan on doing, because I don't want a lot of replication. Like I don't want everyone to review the same kinds of tools. Now it's possible that for example, someone already has done Google Hangouts and you really want to do that. You can go ahead and claim that. I just don't want every single person to be doing Google Hangouts. So if you see 3 or 4 people that already covered a particular tool, try to find a different tool so that we have a good mix of things that we've reviewed for the class. So once you claim that this week, which should happen fairly early, you can go back in and do your readings and then find those kinds of tools or technologies you want to review. And again, you'll have ideas for different kinds of tools from the Pacansky-Brock book, or just Google online, see what other faculty use. And then discuss with your classmates throughout the week how you might use these tools in your classes. So, for example, if in week 1 you needed to do some sort of student discussion, maybe Google Docs is a good place to do that, to break students into small groups. So just start thinking about connecting those tools and technologies into the course that you're already creating. I wanted to point out one place if you are currently a UALR instructor, you will have access to our Blackboard pages. You'll have instructor access to Blackboard sites. If you're not currently a UALR instructor, you won't be able to get a course to design, to look at Blackboard tools, and if you want to look at that as an LMS. However, you can go to Course Sites, which is the web-based version of Blackboard, and sign in and get a free account, and that will show you basically all of the tools that your regular Blackboard site has, so you can go in from the instructor side and review those tools as well. So create a site in Course Sites, kind of play around with that, see if maybe some of the Blackboard tools or tools that you want to review, that's the place you can go to do that if you don't already have an instructor account in Blackboard. Finally, technology map. So what we're going to do after we've kind of discussed the tools is you're going to create a technology map. So open this template in Google Docs. I've just created the basic grid for you, and make a copy of that. So go to File and make a copy. I think you've already done this. Name it with the title of the assignment. And then identify a pedagogical need. And Scott Warnock does a model of this in chapter 3. On pages 20 and 21 in his book. What I'm asking you to do here is a little bit different, because I want you to identify the interaction type, if it's instructor to student, student to student, or student to content, and that's what these letters right here are. So what's your need? What do you need students to accomplish? What kind of interaction is it? It might be multiple, it might be just one of those. And then identify what are some technologies for that purpose. And it could be technologies your classmates have reviewed that you want to kind of pull from. It could be things that you've reviewed or things that you just have an idea you might want to use. And then identify a few resources that can assist you with this technology. So if you are teaching at UALR, would the STAR office be a resource? Can you find videos online, that tutorials that help walk you through this, so that you are creating this kind of plan to help you integrate technologies into your course. We're going to do this in a really basic way in this intro class, and then if you take the multimedia for online writing instruction course later in this sequence, we're going to take this chart and really flesh that out and start to develop the technologies that you're going to identify here for your online course. So this is just getting us started, getting us to think about the technology tools we might use to meet those pedagogical needs. That's all for this video. I've tried to talk as quickly as I can. I know it's still a little long. Hopefully that you have a good idea of what we're going to be doing this week and why. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, contact me, and we can sit down and do a synchronous chat and Google Hangouts if you'd like. And have a great week. Thank you and goodbye.